If you have 8 hours in a day, figure out what you can do, right? If it's user research, if it's user interviews, if it's testing a prototype among 20 people who happen to be inside the building, if you can't get to end users, I don't care what it is, but do something. Don't sit on your hands and say, they won't let me, or I'm not allowed to. There's no such thing, okay? There's always something that you can do, and you should do it. You don't need permission to do that. You don't even need to expose the fact that you're doing it. As long as nothing is suffering as a result, as long as you're not breaking any promises that you made, as long as you're still delivering what you agreed to deliver, right? And you're working in the best interest of the organization and the users, you have to do something.
Hey everybody, welcome to UX Gorilla's Master Series. Our goal with this show is to help you gain new perspectives, tools, strategies and mindset for a successful career as a user experience designer. We are inviting some of the smartest experts from different industries around the world and learn about the path they took, the challenges they faced and the learnings they had to help you accelerate your own journey. Our next guest today is Joe Natoli, who has been preaching and practicing user experience for 27 years now, even before UX was known as UX. So far, he has helped Fortune 500 and 100 organizations build solid products and UX practices from the scratch. He is a well-known public speaker who has shared his knowledge at platforms like Interaction South America, How Design Life, SDD and QCon, and also at regional events like PechaKucha. He is also the author of Think First, published worldwide in 2015, which according to the Dr. Don Norman is a very practical guide to UX success in business. His courses and books are one of the first resources that aspiring UX designers encounter when they are starting their UX journey. He has so far trained 140,000 plus designers through 6 of his online training programs. 2 of his courses on Udemy are the best-selling and most popular courses in the UX category. You have to see the online reviews and stories shared by his students to believe the impact he has had on his students. Though his students and clients like to claim that Joe has a sixth sense for UX, Joe believes it is the focus on results and the time spent with the client on framing the right problem that makes great user experience. A no-nonsense guy, Joe trains his students to deal with the reality of working in the messy corporate world instead of what he calls UX fantasy land. Joe follows a no technical jargon policy, which means he refrains from using UX terms, fancy and complex processes, and instead talk the language of people he is speaking to. In that sense, Joe is empathetic to not just the users but also everyone involved in the product development. His articles, advices and videos are shared generously by Joe on his platform givegoodux.com. If you think he is doing all that because he is Joe Natoli, he did not have it easy. Since the beginning of his career, Joe has been willing to be the guy who will raise his hand and ask uncomfortable questions when it was needed for the interest of the business, which means he has fallen down but always stood up. In his own words, you do not have to ask for anyone's permission to do the right thing. It is this honesty, fearlessness, confidence and humility that has made him one of the most loved UX mentors around the world. I am extremely honored to have him here with us. Thank you so much, Joe, for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and thank you very much for that unbelievably kind introduction. Those words mean the world to me. Thank you.
I'm so glad to have you here with us, Joe. Your work has impacted me, and I'm sure so many designers like me. We have started our UX journey because we had a mentor like you. So let's start with the very basic. I would like to know from you that how do you define UX? What is UX according to you?
Well, I mean, there's obviously the classical definition, right? Which is it's everything. It's every aspect of our interaction with something. It's everything from the actual product that we're using, whether that's good, bad, otherwise, useful, not useful, helpful, not helpful, easy, hard. But it's also, it's every interaction with the organization that's behind it as well. It's how people answer the phone.
Right.
It's how long you have to wait on hold when you call somebody. It's their social media presence that offers help, but yet makes you wait 6 hours for somebody to get back to you once you contact them. All right. So user experience is all those things. But the other thing that I say all the time about UX that I think everybody tends to forget about is that it's a value loop. Okay. There are two sides. We talk about users all the time because user is in that term, right? User experience. But the truth is the business side of the equation is just as important. So I say it's a value loop. If people get value from using something, what should happen is value should also go to the organization that created it, right? That's money made, money saved. If they agree that it's valuable, that's when they make a commitment to improving it, to updating it, to making it better, and to making it more usable for us. So it's a loop, and it's really important to remember that both sides of that equation have to be satisfied.
Right. Amazing. So coming to the part where you say that UX also has a value for not just the users because it has the term user, but also the business side of it. So what does that process looks like, Joe? Like, let's say if somebody is working for a client or somebody is working for their organization, how should they inculcate this mindset, and how then they should understand the business side of it?
Well, I personally believe, and this flies in the face of a lot of what you'll read and hear, I suppose, but I think you have to start with the business. I think you have to start with the concerns of everybody, from product owners to product managers to your fellow team members, your developers, but obviously to stakeholders as well, right? Product owners, marketing managers, executives, whoever, because to put it this way, okay, if they don't care about the work that you're going to do, or if they don't understand what it can get them,
Right.
they're not going to sign off on it. They're not going to buy into it. They're not going to see its value. When you get opposition, okay, when you're trying to convince people that, okay, we should do user interviews, we should do UX work, we should do usability testing. When you get opposition, it's usually born of two things. The first thing is often fear, because it's like, we're going to spend all this time and all this money, and I don't really understand what it is you're telling me we need to do, or what it's going to get me. The larger problem is usually that they don't understand how those things that you're proposing to do are going to help them get what they want, right? Are going to help them alleviate the uncertainty that they have, or the fear that they have, or get them to the goals that they're after, right? Or that somebody else is pressing down on their necks to say, you need to accomplish this. That's a big part of the problem. So to me, I want to start with what the people inside the organization are concerned with first. All right. And once I get that, then I want to find the sweet spots between that and what users potentially want or need or will use, again, to satisfy both parts of that equation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Primarily, you are responsible for bringing everyone on the team on the same page. You were telling me how, like, the first day that you meet, you bring everyone on the same page. Now, with so many stakeholders, what does that process looks like? Like, if I was, your shadow, what is it that I would see you doing in that room with different product stakeholders?
There's definitely a process. And the first part is, like I said to you, I want to get as many people from as many different departments in that room on day one. And if I can't get them in the room, I at least want them on the phone. I at least want them to be exposed to what's going on, because everybody inside an organization has a goal, right? They have things they want to accomplish. And sometimes those are product related things, and sometimes they're organizational related things. If you're going to go ahead and do work, especially in a large organization,
right,
okay, which most of the clients that I work with are large global organizations with big distributed product teams and big distributed management. I want to know what everybody's intent is. I want to know what everybody's goals are, because just by nature of them being in different roles, right? Marketing, sales, product, VP of whatever, chief financial officer, legal team who's worried about, legal issues. I want to know what everybody's concerns are, because if you're not aware of those things at the outset, they will enter later. Okay. Those people who weren't in the room will enter at some point and say, yeah, but we can't do that because A, B, and C. For instance, I have a lot of healthcare clients, a lot of financial services clients. Regulatory issues are massive in both those industries. Right. So if you don't have legal, at least part of that initial conversation, for example, they show up 6 weeks into an undertaking and they say, wait a minute, we can't do any of this. Right. Because it violates, a HIPAA policy, or there's regulatory scrutiny right now on these aspects of our businesses, and we can't appear to be doing anything that's improper, even if we're really not.
Right.
Okay. So you just wasted 6 weeks because there's a whole lot of things you didn't know. There's natural opposition, all right, in people's roles inside an organization. I want to know as much as possible, what all that is on day one, so that I can make sure going forward that everybody's concerns are being addressed, so that they feel like they've got a voice, so that they feel like they're being heard, so that they feel like later on they don't have to butt in and say, hey, what are you guys doing?
Right.
So it's a level set. So that first day is having a big conversation with each representative person and saying, what do you want? Right? Related to what we're doing here, what do you want to happen? What do you need to happen? What are you worried about? What are you afraid is going to happen? If we don't do this, what are you afraid is going to happen if we do this? Right? That's always what day one is. And sometimes that goes beyond day one. Sometimes we'll spend 3 days just talking to people from different departments.
Right. The beauty of this approach is that these people that you interview or you involve on the very first day, now they have become your co-creators. So it's no more like, them versus us. They actually vouch for your success. They want you to succeed because they are a part of it from the day one. So absolutely.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Exactly. So Joe, in the earlier conversations when we had, and I told you that how there are so many young designers who go with the exact same mindset. Probably they have heard you speaking, or probably they have read good books, and now they're all pumped up and they want to do what is good for the organization, good for the business and for their users. But they get a pushback. And if it happens once or twice, they get inside this victim mindset. So what do you think are the ways to navigate these challenges where, they can contribute and they don't have to, as you say that, you don't have to ask for permission to do the right thing. So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, there's a couple ways. There's a couple ways to combat that. I mean, the first way is always, if you're getting opposition, you want to find out where it's coming from. And 9 times out of 10, I've said this before, 9 times out of 10, that opposition, that pushback is coming from fear. All right. It's, I don't understand what you're doing. I don't understand how it's going to help me. I don't understand how that gets me where I want to be. I feel like I'm in the dark here, speaking as a stakeholder, right? You need to find out what, I always use the example of the sword of Damocles hanging over their head, right? It's going to drop at any time. What is that? There's pressure somewhere where they feel like the stuff you're doing doesn't get them any closer to what they need. There's still something that they're worried about. So you need to have a conversation, number one, and find out, why do you feel like what we're doing here isn't going to get you what you want? That's part of it. Now, you may get an answer, you may not. You may sometimes just get opposition and people don't want to talk to you. And they don't want to green light anything, and they don't want to say, yes, you can do that. What I say to teams in those instances is you have 8 hours in a day, figure out what you can do, right? If it's user research, if it's user interviews, if it's testing a prototype among 20 people who happen to be inside the building if you can't get to end users. I don't care what it is, but do something. Don't sit on your hands and say, they won't let me, or I'm not allowed to. There's no such thing, okay? There's always something that you can do, and you should do it. You don't need permission to do that. You don't even need to expose the fact that you're doing it. As long as nothing is suffering as a result, as long as you're not breaking any promises that you made, as long as you're still delivering what you agreed to deliver, right? And you're working in the best interest of the organization and the users, you have to do something. All right. And it doesn't matter how imperfect it is. It doesn't have to be by the book UX. Okay. Just do something, learn more, use Google. I mean, I don't care what it is.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, it makes sense because we are so much focused on just, trying to figure out which process, which option, how to do it, how to get it documented, how to get permissions, that in the end, like the whole day passes, the whole week passes, and
That's
you
right.
have been more productive about it. Absolutely. So you refrain deliberately from using any UX terminology, like you don't use any UX terms.
Not if I can help it.
So why is it a policy so as to say that you do not use any technical jargons, even the most basic ones, which seem like the most basic ones? Why don't you use them, and how has it helped you?
Two reasons. There are two reasons I don't do that. Number one, most people don't know what the hell any of it means. Okay. They don't understand those words. They'll nod their head because they've heard some of them before. Okay. People will nod their head and pretend they know what you're talking about. In a lot of cases, they don't. And they're too embarrassed to say that they don't. That's human nature. That's the first thing. The second thing is that it's kind of like, I liken it to going to a foreign country. If you walk into a country, if I walk into a country where no one speaks English, okay? If I continue to insist that to speak to them in English and expect them to talk to me or work with me or help me, I'd say that's kind of a fool's errand, right? It's foolish. They don't understand me. And if they don't understand me, they don't understand me. So I think not just in this industry, but in any industry, I think terminology and jargon and acronyms obscure meaning. Okay. And I got this from my father, who is a process engineer, was a process engineer all his life at General Motors. His whole thing is clarity and simplicity. Break it down to its basic common element so that every single person in the room, no matter what their experience is, no matter what their education is or their understanding or their language skills, or whatever the case may be, so that everybody can understand it. Right? Because if that's not the case, if we don't do that, what are we doing? How can we expect anybody to get in line behind us? How can we expect anybody to work with us? How can we expect anybody to support what we're doing if we're not making an effort to communicate clearly about what this is and why it matters? I think terminology gets in the way of all that.
Absolutely. So I think this is one mistake that many designers have made, sometimes to even substitute for the lack of knowledge that they had. Like, I've been there sometimes when in the beginning I wanted to impress my clients. This is like a general defense mechanism that, I would intimidate them first before they intimidate me. But I think, yeah, that's true. But, somehow down the line, you realize that you have created this much gap between you and client, and now they don't even they avoid talking to you because they don't understand your language. Absolutely, it makes sense.
It's an implication. And when you talk that way, you're implying that this person knows less than you. All right. The minute you put yourself on that pedestal of, well, I have to educate you,
right?
You're not having a conversation anymore. Right? You're not having a give and take. You're having you don't know anything and I have to educate you. Nothing good comes from that, ever.
Thanks, Joe. Like, this is like, absolutely, you've said it correctly. So apart from this one mistake that many designers make, what are some of the mistakes that you see many designers make, especially when they are starting their career, and you think if they avoid these mistakes, they can do great?
I don't know if I'd call it a mistake. but it certainly is a pattern, and it's a hard one to break because, I mean, I was the same way, okay? What I'm going to describe to you, I was certainly guilty of. Like a lot of things, if you do anything long enough and if you live long enough, you learn some things, and you learn most of them the hard way. What I see an awful lot of is, it's two things in general. Number one, a lot of young designers and UXers in particular want concrete examples for everything. They want an exact scenario that fits their situation, right? I want an apples to apples example of how that works, you know, for this type of client and this type of situation. And can you just walk me through that process, a step-by-step, whatever. I need exercises, I need examples. And you don't, okay? You're waiting for something that is never going to come. There's no such thing as a silver bullet. There is no one answer to any UX question or design problem. It's not going to come, number one. Number two, your situation is your situation, and no other situation is like that. So all you're doing when you're looking at an example of something is you're seeing someone else's solution to someone else's problem. Now, I didn't invent that phrase, but I love it. I read it somewhere and I went, that's brilliant. I have to start using that. But it's true, okay? What needs to happen is you need to develop the courage to go forward and take a step and try something, even if you feel like you don't know what you're doing. Like one of the things I say all the time is feel the fear, do it anyway. Right. You're not going to be fearless. You're not going to be 100% confident. You're never going to feel like I absolutely know the answer to this. That's kind of the gig. That's the job that we have, to find out. All right. And the only way you find out is by trying things. So that's the first thing is I think new designers, new UXers have a tendency to sit on their hands until they get a perfect example that exactly fits their situation. Nothing good happens while you're waiting. Okay. You got to try something. That's the first thing. The second thing goes back to kind of what we already talked about, so I won't belabor it, but it's this, for lack of a better way to say it, it's complaining, right? They won't let me, they don't understand. Nobody will hire me, recruiters, hiring managers, bosses, product owners, product managers, developers, all this need to point fingers and say, well, it's their fault and they're this, and they won't let me do this, and they're keeping me from doing this. As recently as a couple of days ago, I said to somebody who was going down this path, and I wasn't getting anywhere with them, trying to convince them, look, just believe in yourself, believe in your ability, go forward. You can do it. All right. I know it's tough, but you can do it. You'll get there. You got to be patient. And it wasn't going anywhere. He just kept coming back with, yeah, but blah, 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 blah. And finally I said, look, I don't know what else to say to you except this. Of all the things that have held me back in my life and my career, none of them were other people. None of them were outside circumstances. None of them were things outside my control. At the end of the day, the only thing that ever held me back was me. That's not an easy truth, but it's the truth. Okay, so you can either expend all your energy into anger and frustration and complaining and whatever, or you can try to move past that and just try to keep pushing forward until you understand how whatever this is works, you know? So those are the two things to me that I see most often. And I get it. I want you to understand, I sympathize because I know what it feels like. I know how much it hurts. I know how frustrating it is. I really, really do. I understand that. But it's just like when you have kids, you want to spare them the learning of the same hard lessons that you had to learn the hard way. You want to give them the answer and say, no, if you just do this, it'll be okay. But there's a component, you know, where, I mean, maybe everybody has to learn for themselves, and that's just the way it is. But in the meantime, I try to help. I try to help as much as I can with those things, and hopefully, you know, maybe it'll help somebody.
There are times when still, you know, you are not productive. Some client has said something, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, how you're feeling about it, ultimately it's your own responsibility to feel good or bad about it. Absolutely.
That's right.
Thanks for reminding us that, Joe. So you have trained so far, which is a humongous number, by the way, 140,000 plus designers so far. So
Yeah.
for you personally, what has been your biggest learning as a mentor?
I would say you sort of over time, if you do anything long enough, and I've been working with students a long time. Before I had online courses, I've taught university part-time since 1992, I want to say. But in all those years, from actual university and then now online courses, and then obviously interfacing with people on social media, you sort of learn where your value is. You learn more about what you have to offer, and what is most valuable to people, and what it is that you can do to help them the best. At the beginning, I sort of thought that was typical UX or design stuff, right? Here's the theory, here's the practice, here's how you apply this tactical stuff. The longer I do this, it's more about the kinds of things that we're talking about, which is, how do I exist in the world? How do I do this work in difficult situations? How do I keep myself focused and centered? How do I not lose my motivation? How do I deal with difficult human beings in difficult situations? How do I exist inside product teams? And what's all the messy stuff that these perfect world UX processes don't account for? That's me at this point. That's where I think the value of what I do is, and that's kind of at this point in my career what I focus on as a result. But I've learned that, to your question, I've learned that along the way that's needed, and it also happens to be something that I seem to be able to help people with.
I remember reading somewhere on the blog you mentioned that my job is to bring you out of the UX fantasy land. Like, that's not the place where I want to take you, and I want to show you the real messy corporate, like, how the actual things happen. So coming to that, what is Give Good UX, and what is your role there? What do you do there?
Give Good UX is an imprint, essentially. It's all the things that I do, from books to courses to the blog, the podcast. Give Good UX is just sort of my branded name for that, right? It's my imprint. As all things, as a consultant, as a teacher, as an instructor, as a speaker, as an author, and it's just sort of been built up over time, and a lot of that credit, I always want to say this, a lot of the credit for that goes to my wife, Ellie, because she has been the best, the business partner. She's the best business coach I've ever had. She's the best advisor I've ever had. She took all these things that I was doing and sort of helped me realize where my value is, right? What I do best, what I have to offer. The online courses probably would have never happened were it not for her intervention, but she's very clear-eyed about a lot of things, and it's why she has such a successful career helping entrepreneurs and helping businesses sort of do the same thing. But so yeah, Give Good UX is just the outward expression of all those things that I do.
I think all of us must thank Ellie, because I don't know what would have happened if she wouldn't have made this happen. So many UX career, Joe. I mean, seriously. So what are some of the courses that you teach?
Well, the courses that I started out with were more basic UX courses, right? On Udemy, udemy.com. I have the UX Design Fundamentals was my first course, and still manages to be my most popular, which was it's just fundamental theory and principle, born out of love of Jesse James Garrett's book, The Elements of User Experience, which was like, when I first read it a million years ago, was just blew my head wide open. I thought, this is the most brilliant thing I've ever seen. And that to me is a big part of the foundation for what we do, aside, of course, from Don Norman. From there, we did another course called UX Web and Master Course, which is more project project focused, where you start with UX strategy, you move to information architecture, to design, to prototyping, all the outward expression of that. And then there's a coding element to it as well, which Ellie again helped me with because she's also an excellent developer. So it's two parts, right? Here's the sort of strategy, UX and design part, and content and information part. And then here's how it manifests itself in codes. Again, meant for beginners. Both of those courses are beginner level courses. I recently did another course called Design Rules, which is all about visual design, UI design, the basic principles essentially behind graphic design that still to this day drive good UI design. Okay, when I went to college in the late 80s, I went to college for graphic design. That's what I learned. But what's been true my entire career is that those principles, which were established, way back in the 1930s and 40s and probably earlier than that, still ring true today. Those things are still at the core of everything we do as UI designers. So I wanted to take that and give young people, especially, a set of rules. Okay, these are the things you can lean on. These things are always going to be true, not just designers, but to developers as well who do UI design, of which there are a lot of them. Here are the things you can lean on. If you feel like you don't know anything about this, if you don't feel like you know how to design something properly, instead of looking for examples like we just talked about,
right,
here are the things you can lean on. Here's what they are. Here's how they manifest themselves. That's been very well received. I also have a couple courses on my own platform, learn.givegoodux.com, one of which is a portfolio course for UX folks, which is essentially, it's me saying, look, everything that you read and hear about how to build a portfolio is wrong. Okay. What recruiters want from you, what hiring managers want from you, what potential employers want from you is not talked about in a lot of these courses and a lot of these articles and a lot of these videos. And I just finally got to a point where I had enough. That was born from trying to help a client staff up, actually. I got so frustrated looking at these portfolios. It was like looking at the same portfolio 600 times. And I thought, you've got to differentiate yourself. You got to tell me a story that matters to me, right? Give me something that I care about. So I developed a course as a result. There's two other courses on my platform. One is all about UX requirements and how to develop meaningful requirements, how to figure out what people really need versus what they say they need. And the last one is a quick 90-minute UX audit. A lot of times, young designers, developers, UXers, whoever, are given, this much time to improve something. Okay, we've got a problem with this product. We need to redesign it. And the question is, okay, well, where do I start? What's going to make the most impact? What I found over the years is that a lot of user experience problems are born in the interface. So when you have no time, one of the strongest things you can do is follow, again, a very clear-cut set of guidelines and fix some things in the UI. And that goes a long way in fixing real UX problems. Okay, so that course is all about, it's like you're looking over my shoulder, we evaluate something and then we redesign it.
Wow.
So that's the rundown. Working on another one, actually.
Oh, wow.
It's more of a boot camp workshop kind of thing, but essentially what it is, I want to teach people to do what I do with clients.
Wow.
Okay, in terms of consulting, in terms of helping them solve big, hairy UX problems. It's what I do from the time that we start talking about the project to what I do when I'm in the room with them for 3 days, 5 days, a week, a month. I'm going to walk people through my exact framework for all this stuff. And it's a big undertaking, but it's underway, and I'm enjoying it because I feel like it's something it's not an approach that most people take. But it's been serving me well for 27, almost 28 years now. So that's coming up. I don't know whether it'll launch this year or not, but I'm hopeful.
Looking forward to it, Joe. So I think there's something that you mentioned which really got my attention. You said that all the 600 portfolios all looking the same. And these days, with Dribble coming up, it's just a matter of just, posting all the shiny objects there.
Yeah.
What do you think, what according to you is that thing that you find missing in a portfolio? Like if you can just, tell us that what are the things that can differentiate your portfolio from those 600 portfolios?
That on the very first page, evidence that answers the question, why you? Okay. One portfolio that says, hi, I'm so-and-so. I love positive user experiences, or I love creating positive user experiences, or I'm a UX designer, or I'm a this. Who cares? How does that help me make a decision? I've got a stack or a list of URLs of people that I need to check out. If I'm a recruiter, if I'm a hiring manager, if I'm an employer, I have a bunch of stuff I have to get through, which means you got 3 to 6 seconds to make an impression on me, to tell me something that's meaningful enough for me to go deeper and check you out.
Right.
On that very first screen, you have got to tell me something about you that's valuable to me. Right? What have you done? Who have you done it for? What did you accomplish?
That's true.
You got to give me something I can use, because otherwise all I'm thinking about is, okay, another one. I got to get through this list. That may sound cold, but it's reality. So that to me is the biggest thing. You got to surface some evidence of what makes you valuable to that organization.
Right.
Tell me why I should spend another 20 minutes, not even 20 minutes. Tell me why I should spend another 5 minutes looking at your website or your case studies or your work.
So, Joe, there are times when, everybody starts from some point, and these days, education now is no more only about going to the college and earning a degree. So many students, many aspiring designers, actually, they do not have a portfolio, so to say, like, where they have worked with the client and they are just starting. So what do you think, how should they approach creating a portfolio which sounds like, which looks legit and it is beneficial for the clients or for the companies that are going to hire them?
Well, I always say, and there's, if I could remember what the exact URL was, I'd give it to you. But if you go to my blog, givegoodux.com/blog, I wrote an article about this. How do I create a portfolio if I don't have any real world experience?
Wow.
There's always something you can do to demonstrate how you think.
Right.
Right. And also what you're trying to demonstrate is the way that I think. The reason I do it that way is to get some kind of desired outcome, right? There's something that I'm gunning for. Here's how I would help this organization. So you can make something up. What I don't want to see people do is take things like, well, I redesigned the Apple website, or I redesigned.
Right.
Don't redesign something that's already successful. Take something in your own life that you feel like is not working. An app on your phone, a website that you use all the time, any product that you think is failing you in some way and could be better, that would cause you to use it more often or sign up or subscribe, or in other words, attach it to a business problem, right? And then create a project around it. Walk me through what you would change and why you would change it. That, even if you don't have any experience, tells me as the hiring manager, as a recruiter, as an employer, as the head of the UX department, let's say, it tells me how you think. It tells me how you apply yourself to the problem. It tells me what you care about. It also tells me that you're thinking about what I would think about, right? So there's always a way to do that. If you don't have projects, find some, make some up, help that friend of yours who's trying to get his music career off the ground and build him a website that showcases, his work. There's always a way, but you have to create something other than here's some cool stuff I designed, on Dribbble or Behance.
Exactly. So, what according to you, Joe, are the skills that UX designers must have apart from the usual stuff, apart from the software stuff? What are the skills that you think designers must have to succeed in their career?
I think you have to have, number one, it's funny, the first thing that comes to me is something we've talked about. I think you have to have an extraordinary degree of courage, first and foremost, because there are going to be a lot of times when it's difficult. There's going to be a lot of times when you're unsure and uncertain, partly because that's the nature of this work. Right. Uncovering what problems need to be solved and then figuring out how to solve them, or what the right thing to do is for the right reasons, is loaded with uncertainty. So you have to have a lot of courage to sort of stand there and feel like, okay, I have no idea where to start, but I have to start somewhere, right? I have to get through this. That's the first thing. I think communication skills are probably high up there on the list as well. You cannot be afraid to open your mouth. You cannot be afraid to ask questions. You cannot be afraid to try to figure out what you don't know. I mean, those are all big things to me. You have to have a willingness to sort of take ownership of things, right? It's like we said before, instead of waiting for something to happen, you have to be the person that says, I have an idea. What if we did this? Or what if we ask these people about this? Or what if we try this? That part, to me, that thinking part, right, and how you conduct yourself is infinitely more important than any tactical skill you're ever going to have. You can learn processes. You can learn software. You can learn tools. Those things are easy. The stuff I'm talking about is the harder stuff. And the stuff I'm talking about is what allows you to have a career of any length. When I was hiring, when I had my own company, and when I've hired, or helped clients hire, or when I've hired in jobs that I had before I formed my own company, I always felt like I'll take attitude over experience every day of the week. Because the attitude parts that I'm talking about, those are things that can't be taught. That's either there, or it isn't. Or at the very least, the willingness to go there is there, right? Those are really the critical things. I tell designers and UXers all the time, if you're going to sharpen any skills, sharpen your ability to think, okay? Focus on asking more questions. Focus on digging into what's really going on here and not being satisfied with what someone tells you needs to happen. Go deeper, dig deeper. That's where your value is.
Wow.
I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, you definitely did. So, yeah, I mean, these are of course not the things that are easy, and there is probably not a YouTube tutorial or a course on learning these skills. But yeah, I think it's more about how much time do you spend thinking, like, doing the real thinking and then exploring, doing a lot of self-learning. So definitely. So the next question, Joe, for me is that I meet a lot of designers during meetups here, and they usually ask that, should we pick up freelancing, or should we pick up job, or should we, start our own business? And I know there is no right answer to any of it, but how do you think one should analyze the situation, or how should that process looks like, that what should be a better career option for me?
To be honest with you, I really think that the only way to do that is to go down a path and see what happens, to see how you feel about it.
Right.
There's no way to know. You can debate endlessly. You may have a nagging feeling inside that says, I want to run my own business, or I want to be a freelancer, or I want to start my own firm with employees. That may be there, but for a lot of people, it's more like a question. Like, maybe I'd be happier doing this. Maybe I'd be happier doing that. And what you have to do is just sort of, you got to go down a path and be honest with yourself about how it feels.
Right.
Okay. I jumped ship when I was very young from an advertising agency to start my first company. That was in the late 90s. And I was either brave enough or naive enough to think I could do it because this internet thing came about, right? And I was convinced that this was something, and I couldn't convince the men that I worked for, the older white men that I worked for, that this internet thing was real. So I was young enough and brash enough to say, well, fine, I'm going to do it myself if you guys won't listen to me. I did that for a long time. And then I started to feel like, maybe I got burnt for a number of reasons. I reached a point where I was burned out, and I felt I got an opportunity to sell my company to an IT firm. Okay. And it just felt like, at the time, it felt like the right thing. I thought, okay, I want some of this weight of running a company off my shoulders.
Right.
And this would give me the ability to do that. I bring my team in-house. We establish a UX practice there. We hang out. We learn some new things, right? It's a new adventure in a way. And I thought, okay, we'll give it a shot. Well, 2 years later, it was not a good decision for lots of reasons. But its culture was kind of toxic. There were a lot of pieces that didn't fit that seemed like they would at the outset, but didn't. And that's okay. I decided, well, all right, I'm happier going back to doing independent consulting. So that's what I did. And any path I've gone down, I told you about, my wife pushing me to do online learning, online courses. My reaction to that was, all right, it's worth trying, right? It sounds good. The case you're making makes all the sense in the world to me. So let's give it a shot. Let's do a course and see what happens. That's always sort of been my approach to everything. The only way to know is to go. You gotta go down the path and see what happens, and pay close attention to your reaction. Pay close attention to how you feel about it, in your heart. How you feel every day when you wake up. How do you feel when you're doing the work? The older you get, fortunately, I think you get more certainty about that. There are certain activities that I'm doing when I'm in a room with a client's team, when I'm on stage speaking, when I'm doing things like this, when I'm talking to students, when I'm talking to young people, when I'm trying to help somebody. Those are all moments where I feel like I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, right? It feels right. It feels natural. It feels positive. It's like, yeah, more of this. But I don't know that there's any way to figure that out until you experience it, unfortunately.
No, that's true. I think next time when someone asks me this question, probably I redirect them to your answer. That's true. So
give it a shot and see what happens. There are no wrong turns. Okay.
absolutely.
There are no wrong turns. If you find out you went the wrong way, you go do something else. It's fine.
That's true. So, so far we've talked about the good traits and the bad traits of a designer. So, what according to you are some of the bad, some of the traits of a bad client? Like if you see these red flags, run away, don't come back, don't pick up their call. So, what do you think would be the red flags where you have to decide that, this path probably is not right?
Well, I think there are a number of things. Attitude is one. I mean, there's, in general, if I have a conversation with a prospect, okay, and they start the conversation with, we need to accomplish this, and this by this date, that's a red flag for me already, because they don't even, to my mind, right, and this is not knocking them in any way or their ability or their knowledge or their understanding about their own business, okay, because they know more about it than I do. But they've already figured out what the solution is.
Right.
And experience at this point in my life tells me that they don't really know what the problem is. They know what the symptoms are. And they're doing a very human thing in that they're jumping to a conclusion as to what the solution should be. So the next thing I do to validate that is I say, well, that may be, but one of the things that I do is we spend some time together to find out what's really worth doing. Okay, because it may be this big project and it may be this much money and it may be this much time. It may also be that only a quarter of that is really worth your time and your money and our effort. Okay. So I feel like part of what you're hiring me to do is to be a responsible steward of your money. So it's worth our while to spend some time figuring that out. Now, if they balk at that, if they get angry, if they get indignant, if they take that as an insult, we're done. Because I know the way the rest of the conversation is going to go. Not because I'm unbelievably smart and I know everything. It's just experience, right? When you've seen a movie so many times, you know how it's going to end, right? You know what the next line is. So that's part of it. If I do start working with a client and I get anger, if I get name calling, if I get just childish behavior of any kind, right? Someone who loses their temper all the time, I'm done. This is going to go nowhere. Those types of things are red flags. Clients who are exclusively focused on cost and will not sign off on anything or will not agree to even speak to you anymore unless you give them a figure. That's a red flag, because they don't care about solving the problem. They're already convinced that they know what needs to be done. And the only thing that matters is that we stay under this number.
Right.
That's not going to get them what they want. It's going to blow up in your face. They're going to be unhappy at the end of it. They're going to be mad at you because you didn't get, the result that they had hoped for and made up in their mind that they're going to have. Those things are all red flags. It's a red flag when when I say we need to talk to, your development team, we need to bring these people into this meeting. If people start saying, well, no, we can't do that. Those are all red flags for me. Okay. Life is too short to be in those situations. So, I mean, those are the kinds of things that I look for. Anytime someone is rigid, anytime you feel like you're being dictated to rather than you and I are having a conversation about what your problems are and what's possible and what's needed. If I can't turn that initial phone call, even with a prospect, into what feels like a working meeting, right, where we're having a conversation, a back and forth conversation, casual, just let's dig into this. Tell me what's going on. What's hurting you? How is it hurting you? If they're not willing to go there with me and they just want to talk about rigid time, budget, money, activities,
right,
I'm done. We're not going there. There are a lot of people that do tactical work on a fixed budget. I'm not one of them.
The reason why I asked this question, Joe, is because I cannot tell you, there are so many students that I have mentored personally. I've been there in situations before that there's a pattern that never gets broken. Like there are people who kind of, they keep picking up these projects where the client is like, they have certain toxic behavior, then the bridges are burned, then they'll jump on to the next one. And sometimes it's that desperation that you have to keep working, but ultimately it never serves them well. So I think these are also the kind of conversations that are very important. And probably, just as the client is making a decision, you are also making a decision for yourself to work with someone. So I think
and you can't forget that.
It's equally important. Absolutely.
You can't forget that. I mean, for people that go on these freelance sites, for example, right? There's Upwork. There's a number of others that whose names are escaping me right now. Here's the thing about those websites. You're signing up essentially, for the most part, most of the projects you're ever going to find there, those are jobs for order takers. Okay. And if you're okay being an order taker and you just want to design, or you just want to code, or you just want to if you're okay with that, there's nothing wrong with it.
Right.
All right. It really isn't. But if you do it and you're frustrated and you're expecting it to be a collaborative situation where you really dig into what's going on and help clients solve real problems, by and large, it's not going to happen there. That those are commodity services, and those types of clients will treat you as such. Anyone who has a budget out of the gate doesn't know what they're hiring you to do in the first place. That's just reality. Okay. So you have to decide what you want out of your career. Do I want a mix of those jobs to pay the bills and then larger, more strategic work that I get on my own? A lot of times that's a good mix, right? And then you transition out of the order taker stuff because now you're getting respect, you're getting testimonials, you're getting clients talking to other clients and saying, hey, this person really helped me. You should talk to them.
Right.
It's all okay, but you have to realize what you're dipping your toes into.
Right.
And also I think the minute you're in a situation where a client balks at your invoice, especially if they already knew what it was going to be, you need to get paid and walk.
Right. So Joe, what do you think about, let's say there's a small team, somebody who is just doing it as a freelancer, or they don't have any partner who can do sales for them. So for them, what do you think, is cold emailing or cold calling a good strategy for them? How can they get projects?
I'll be honest with you. Very early on, when I had my own company, we did a lot of that. Wow. Right. And we did a lot of cold calling. We did a lot of cold emailing. We did a lot of just mailing things to people. By and large, it's a whole lot of effort and very little return. Now, we also didn't have social media at that time. There was no such thing. Okay. I know that's inconceivable for people, but it just really didn't exist. for me at this point, what you want to do is you want to establish an online presence across a website, across Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, that tells the story of what you can do for those people, how you can help those clients, which I have to add means more than just posting your design work and say, look at this made up thing that I just designed. All right. And I hate to pick on this but I see it all the time on Dribbble. I see it on LinkedIn. I see it on Twitter. I see it on Facebook. People just post UI designs, like redesign of whatever. Why? What was wrong with it in the first place? What problem were you solving? How's that going to help anybody? You have to demonstrate your capability, and you have to demonstrate it in a way that makes sense to businesses who might hire you. All right. Because when they're looking, online is the first place that they look. Aside from getting recommendations from people they know, the first place they're going to look is online. They're looking for evidence. If all they see is pretty pictures, you're just like everybody else, right? It goes back to what I said before. So if you want work, I think that we have incredible tools to do that now. Social media has the biggest reach of anything I could possibly ever think of, but you need to express your knowledge. You need to be doing videos. You need to be doing blog posts. You need to be doing quick case studies of things that you've worked on. Say, here's what I did for these people. Here's how it helped them, or here's what's wrong with this product. And here's what I think I would fix it. And here's what I think the outcome would be. That's how you get clients. The other way is you do good work. Okay. You do good work and you're honest, and you never tell people what you think they want to hear. You always operate in the best interest of serving people, doing what's right for them instead of what's easy. That comes around, all right, because you get a reputation for doing that. And then those 2 or 3 clients that you've managed to get work for, word spreads fast, about who you are and your character and everything else. And then people start seeking you out. Okay. At this point, I don't advertise anything. Organizations find me. Okay. They come to me, and the way that they come to me is always through somebody else. Okay. It's always through a business connection, a networking connection, people that I've done work for in the past. Or in some cases, they remember that I was really honest and really straight with them 6 years ago.
Wow.
And now an opportunity has arisen for us to work together, and they think of me. Okay. So it's a lot of those kinds of things, but I think you have more tools at your disposal now than you ever had. But I don't believe cold calling and cold emailing is a good use of anybody's time. Spend that time telling your story in a more compelling manner, in a way that means something to people.
Wow. I think what you said about personal branding makes so much sense. So the problem is that, we all want clients who want to invest in you, who want to collaborate with you. But ultimately, we find posting shiny pictures easier. And then we keep getting those sort of clients who are going to give you
That's
quick
right.
bucks. But, you don't want to engage with them at that level. Absolutely. That makes sense. So,
You're correct.
So Joe, if somebody is listening right now, and I remember in some of your talk, you told that, Alan Cooper's book, I think you were very inspired by his work and it inspired you for the lifetime. So if somebody is listening right now, what do you think are some of those books or resources or anything that changed how you view design and helped you create a strong career?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think anything Alan has ever written is absolute inspiration. The first book I ever read of his was the book that you're mentioning, is called "The Inmates Are Running the Asylum." Fantastic book. And while it was speaking to a very specific point in history, a lot of the things that he talks about in that book are still very, very, very true. Okay, he wrote another book called About Face, about interaction design, which is an equally infinitely valuable book. Don Norman, anything Don Norman has written is infinitely valuable. Steve Krug wrote 2 books about sort of guerrilla UX and usability testing that were also the same thing. When I read Don't Make Me Think, I felt like, man, that's a book I wish I wrote. And I told him that at one point. It's just fantastic, straightforward, brilliant, actionable, easy, simple. And that's the thing that I like about all these people, is that there's none of that high-minded theory and jargon and complexity that you see that prevents people from understanding it. Erica Hall, Mike Montero, two other people. Erica's book, Just Enough Research, for example, is a brilliant book. It's really simple. It's easy to get through. It's very clear. The language is very down to earth, and it's every page you're like, wow, this is gold. So people like that, things like that, I think everybody should expose themselves to. Those are all people who can help you elevate your game. And that goes for the podcasts that they appear on, the things that they write on social media, their Twitter posts. That's all really valuable as well. And some of those people are still my North Stars to this day.
Thank you so much, Joe. I can't tell you, I am enjoying this and I wish I could keep talking to you, but I know we have limited time. So this is my last question to you. Where can our audience find you?
The simplest place to go is givegoodux.com. The second place to go is online via Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Look for Joe Natoli. You will certainly find me. I also have a private Facebook group, a closed group that we call the Give Good UX Company of Friends. The URL for that is friendsgivegoodux.com, which will take you to the Facebook sign up. I will tell you that we don't accept everyone who applies, but we have a community at this point of 6,000 people. Wow. It is incredibly supportive. It's very helpful. It's people sort of rising up out of the woodwork. When someone asks a question, people jump in to try and help them, share their expertise, share their knowledge. And that really was the purpose. And people have turned it into something that's exceeded my wildest expectations. So I encourage anyone who's watching to check that out as well.
Okay. Thank you so much, Joe. I can't thank you enough for taking out time to do this. And not just this, whatever that you're doing and you've done, I wish you all the success. And I wish that we keep learning from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I am honored to be here. I am always honored whenever someone tells me that something I've done has helped them in some small way, because that's the reason to do any of this in the first place. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, please share it with your friends and teammates. Keep learning, keep growing, and I will see you next time.